Let's talk about a couple of individual success stories in this space. So particularly we'll look at the investment landscape if we can, AB. So an example that springs to my mind would be our most recent 2023 Traders of the Year. That was Stu and Jill Garrett down in Canberra. Amazing story because not necessarily forgetting the results for a moment's time, the actual process and habits that they follow to get those results is quite particular.
There's an overnight success for you. Definitely not, there's 50 years of work that they've put in to get themselves into the position. Now they're just back from overseas. I got an email from Stuart yesterday, actually.
Which is their goal, right? They wanted to be able to travel and get out more and also pay for their holidays through their trading profits,
exactly
right?
So another 7 countries ticked off their list.
Wow.
So yeah, they started investing. He, if I remember rightly, he used to sell newspapers and always used to keep a bit of money back and then start to invest based on what he was reading in the Share Island ad, which is, and then into real estate to get some tax down because they were working then, and then they've piloted that into a really decent success story. And I think number one, they've known what they've wanted. They've had a very strong game plan, which is to provide for their retirement, and they earn multiples in retirement of what they earned when they were working. And they both had good jobs that were reasonably well paying, but they're earning multiples of that, and retired at the same time with the liberty and freedom to travel. So they had a very clear goal right at the get-go. They then weren't afraid to change tactics as to what they're doing. They started with real estate and then moved into the stock market because they wanted something that had the ability to generate more cash flow rather than just parking an asset. Welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show. This week we are exploring habits, good and bad. How do they impact on the financial outcomes you get from life? Plenty to unpack on here. We're going to look at a lot of money stuff, but we're also going to look at some of the personal side of things too, because putting those two things together will give you a bulletproof game plan that will make sure you kick the goals that you deserve. As always, don't just take notes, make sure you take plenty of action. Hey guys, welcome to this week's Money and Investing Show with me, your host, Andrew Baxter, and as always, my offsider and co-host, Mitchell Olarenshaw.
Good to be here, Mr. B. Now, topic of today's conversation, my two favorite things: finances and habits, as you know. So we're going to talk today for our listeners about building financial habits and sustaining them.
Look, habits, oftentimes people will see as a negative thing. Oh, you got bad habits, but there are some great habits to have there too. And if you can make, one of the habits you have in life about looking after your money, your finances, you're going to come out of it at the end in a very handsome position, fulfilled, stress-free. And it's happened on autopilot because most habits do happen on autopilot. If you bite your nails, you don't think about it. Bad habit. If you work on money and it becomes a subliminal habit, works in just the same way.
That's right. And if I can couch this too, this episode applies to everyone. So whether you're a millionaire, you've got nothing, you're starting from ground zero, or you're really successful, somewhere in the middle, this all is the same because it's not the number or the goal, it's actually how you get there and what you do to get there.
It's not just how you get there, it's how you stay there. Because,
That's right. True.
It's not what you make, it's what you get to keep. And in a world of, we're in an environment right now where insolvencies are running at all-time highs. So it's very, very important to build those habits into sustain and ensure that you stay on point.
All right, so question for you. Importance of habits. Why are they important? How are they so important? What do they really mean?
Well, I think, as I sort of alluded to, a habit is this subliminal behaviour that you do on autopilot. You don't have to think about it. It just kind of happens. It's programmed in somewhere in your DNA that this is what I do in this set of circumstance. And so it can be incredibly good. It can be incredibly destructive. It could be somewhere in the middle. But perhaps most importantly, habits can be adjusted and changed to turn into a force for good. So, give you an example of a habit might be every time you walk past the fridge at home, you might open the door just to check the light's working and grab something to eat out of it, which is a dangerous and bad habit. And so you might modify that habit that you don't go to the sink, the fridge anymore, you get a glass of water when you go to the kitchen, that's it. And you go back to whatever it was you were doing. All of a sudden you've shut the door to that bad habit and replaced it probably with something that's a bit better, i.e. drinking water. Very basic example, very simple example, and one that highlights how subconscious our behaviour really can be.
It's interesting. I heard a good way to put this on another podcast actually, and the question was, do you want to play on easy mode in life, or do you want to play on hard mode? So if I use an example, let's say you have dinner and there's dishes everywhere, you need to wash up, you go to sleep. The next morning when you wake up and you're trying to get to work, there's stuff everywhere, you don't know where things are, you got to cook, clean, and it's a mess, then you're late for work and then it ruins your day. That's hard mode. Easy mode is if you stack the dishwasher before you go to bed, turn the dishwasher on, you wake up the next day, it's clean. when it comes to finances, it's the same. So if you keep a spreadsheet on your budget or your savings or whatever it is, and you do it regularly versus trying to do it at the end of 6 months or a year, and it's just a total calamity of randomness.
100%.
Easy mode, hard mode.
Couldn't agree with you more. We entertain a heap. One of our rules is that it's got to be all sorted before we knock off. So,
that's right.
But we've got a couple of dishwashers that can go all in there, and as you say, you get up in the morning and you're not dealing with the wreckage. You can start that day on a positive foot rather than have to try and pick up the slack of the day before. So, good way of looking at it. And the bottom line is that habit. We all have habits, and it's a question of trying to channel them in the most positive, helpful, supportive way that are going to serve you, as opposed to be stop signs towards your progress. Different habit, habitual spending. Wherever you go in, you get some people, wherever they go, if there's something to buy, oh yeah, I'll love that, or I'll buy that, or I'll do that. And that's an equally damaging thing to do. It comes hand in hand with scrolling at night. If you're looking online at shop, oh yeah, I don't feel great, TV's not very good, I'll buy that, I'll feel better about it. There's a couple $100 you're never going to see again for something you don't really need or want, and it hasn't really filled the void in your life of unsatisfaction because you can't spend enough money to do that.
That's right. So let's get specific here. Let's talk about aligning the habits that you need, which we'll get an indication on what they are, if we could in a second, as well as how those habits that you need align to the goals that you might want, because ultimately it's about getting you to the financial position that you want to be in, right?
100%. And you've got to know yourself, and you've got to be pretty honest with yourself too. A good tip for trying to discover some of your habits. I've had this in the past with clients that have been maybe fairly unstructured and unfocused through the day across a whole raft of different behaviours, is to say, I just want you to, just like if you go and see a lawyer, everything is carved up into 6-minute increments on your bill just for your convenience apparently, is look at your day on what did you do for the last 6 minutes? Monitor what you actually do so you can see for yourself what you actually do. And most of the time you won't even recognise that you're doing it because it's that conditioned habit. Oh, pick up my phone, got a message, oh, well, I'm there, is there anything on Facebook? Oh, there's Instagram. All of a sudden you're scrolling for 25 minutes and you don't get that 25 minutes back, and you go, oh, where did the day go? That's we're picking on, scrolling as an example, but it's an example of a bad habit that typically won't serve you well. And there are multiple other things that can sit in that sort of space. So I think, recognizing in yourself how you spend your time, and also from a financial perspective, rather than making this too sort of self-improvement / PD, is how do you spend your money? Just as dangerous a habit.
So budgeting would be tip number one, of course, and knowing
Massively
where the money's
so.
going from a financial perspective.
And really budgeting is no different to time management. It's an account of how you're spending your money rather than how you're spending your time. And equally, often how you think you spend your money versus how you actually spend it can be really quite different. And I remember sitting down with one of the people in our financial planning team a while back, and his philosophy was really quite embracing it, and be as honest as you can when you do your budget. And if you happen to go down to the tab on a Saturday because you don't mind having a punt on the horses, that's okay if it's in your budget. If it's $200, $400, whatever, as long as it's in your budget, it's fine, because you can see very clearly where you're deploying your money over the course of the week or month. But when it's not in there, that's where it becomes a problem. And looking at your credit card statement or debit card or whatever to see where you're spending your dough is a really simple way. Oh, gee, that was a lot. Where was that? Oh, yeah.
It's quite interesting because most people will say have a budget, but actually having a budget and being honest about it's probably something that not everyone will tell you.
Look, Mitch, the truth will set you free always, and that's the reality of it. And it's about being able to look at the man in the mirror and be honest with yourself and saying, yep, that budget is accurate. That's what I do with my money, because if it's garbage in, it's going to be garbage out. It's very hard to fix. So no judgment, just get everything you can in there as honestly and clearly as you can. And it is a point to ponder, that's for sure.
So financial habit number 2, you've budgeted, and if you've budgeted, you should be in a cash surplus, I would hope. So second habit is actually saving some money.
Yep, savings has to be a goal in there, because if you don't have surplus cash flow, you're never going to be able to invest. You could add into your budget actual savings, so it becomes a net zero. Effectively, at the end of the month, there's nothing left because any spare cash has gone into an offset account, a micro investing account like Raise, into your broking and trading account with us here, wherever it might be. It's gone somewhere to be working for you, so that there isn't a surplus cash that's unaccounted for. Anything that's spare, straight in the investment account.
So once you've budgeted, saved, and then you've then invested, okay, and now we can obviously help people with that. That's our gig. I think a good one too is to make sure that as a part of your habit, and this is not necessarily day to day, it's probably more quarter, is to actually catch up with your accountant and do a check on how you're tracking, what's going on, particularly if you are self-employed.
Look, again, these are sort of world-class basic skills in that you have to know where you're at and where you're tracking. And over a period of time, you get a lot better, I think, in yourself as to knowing where things are at. At the same time, as you move along the line, things can sometimes become significantly more complicated. So, if you're a self-employed person and you've got a reasonably straightforward business, okay, well, this is a surplus cash, I've got a bit of GST to pay and the rest is mine. When you have a bigger business, you've got, okay, what's our super liability? What are any employee entitlements they're building up? You've got your prepayment of your corporate tax. Understanding where you are in the year and that all those things are taken care of become quite important. But that's with a level of sophistication. If you're at the start point, I think knowing where you are, knowing where your money goes is really important. I think also taking some time to actually work out what's the plan here? Where am I trying to get to? And this is something we drilled into early days in the Wealth Playbook, our book, that is all about finding out what you want and working out what your financial future then looks like. Do you want to be into real estate, in which case you're going to have to be able to save sufficient cash flow for a deposit? And then you're also going to have to then be able to service that debt. If it's an investment property, a little bit different because your tenant hopefully will cover it. But if it's an investment property, the hurdle of getting that deposit is a lot higher. You're not going to get first home buyer grant, all the different things that can scupper you in that journey. So what do you do in the meantime to get from ground zero to maybe 40 grand or 50 grand in cash ready to get yourself started on that investment journey? So you can't put your hands up and go, oh, I'm never going to get there. Let's just live hard, die young, and don't worry about it. It's okay, well, I've only got 12 grand to work with, but it's how do you get that 12 grand to become 13 for you while you're saving to add more to it to get it to then compound. So you've got to have a plan. You have to have a plan of action that's more assertive and affirmative than simply holding cash at the bank. You've got to have that money working for you.
So let's talk about a couple of individual success stories in this space, and particularly we'll look at the investment landscape if we can, AB. So an example that springs to my mind would be our most recent 2023 Traders of the Year. That was Stu and Jill Garrett down in Canberra. Amazing story, because not necessarily forgetting the results for a moment's time, the actual process and habits that they follow to get those results is quite particular.
Yeah, look, there's an overnight success for you. Definitely not. There's 50 years of work that they've put in to get themselves into the position. Now they're just back from overseas. I got an email from Stuart yesterday, actually.
Which is their goal, right? They wanted to be able to travel and get out more and also pay for their holidays through their trading profits,
exactly
right?
So another 7 countries ticked off their list.
Wow.
So they started investing. He, if I remember rightly, he used to sell newspapers and always used to keep a bit of money back and then start to invest based on what he was reading in the Share Island ad, which is, and then into real estate to get some tax down because they were working then, and then they've piloted that into a really decent success story. And I think part of the reason for their success, I think, number one, they've known what they've wanted. They've had a very strong game plan, which is to provide for their retirement. And, they earn multiples in retirement of what they earned when they were working. And they both had good jobs, that were reasonably well paying, but they're earning multiples of that and retired at the same time with the liberty and freedom to travel. So they had a very clear goal right at the get-go. They then weren't afraid to change tactics as to what they're doing. They started with real estate and then moved into the stock market because they wanted something that had the ability to generate more cash flow rather than just parking an asset. They also adjusted the way that they work, so they work together as a team. Where Stuart does a lot of the analysis work and research on the companies, and Jill is responsible for all of the order placing and trade management of what they do. So it's a really good division of labour, which enables both parties to be involved as a couple, gives you something to talk about, work together. I think also from a transparency perspective, both parties know where all the money is, which, if someone falls off the perch, that's probably not a bad thing that the other party knows what's going on. They can help manage it through. And it's also, to my mind, it gives you a church and state situation where if you're the person that comes up with the trading ideas and the other person is doing the execution of it, it removes any emotional connection to the trade. The person that's just hitting the buy button isn't thinking, I hope I'm not wrong with this, and bringing all the emotion that can come with that. They're just simply executing the orders. And that can be a very, very efficient, it's what institutions do. And there's a reason why they do it. So they've almost got their own personal institutional trading model, which again works really, really well for them. And the notion that for them, in particular, getting older, knowing what's going on in the world and being as sharp as a tack and being able to apply a trading strategy across markets very successfully is the sort of thing mentally that's going to keep you a lot younger too, because you're engaged all the time with this amorphous living blob we call the market that changes every day. So big ticks across the board, and it's no surprise to see they're enjoying the success that they have, and thoroughly lovely people too.
It's quite unusual because it's not often that you see a husband and wife combo work so well together in that sense, where there's a division of labour, they've each got a role, and it is structured and followed every single day without fail.
Massive discipline, and you know, when I had lunch with them a little while ago, and it was, you know, how much time do you put into it? So 10, 11 minutes for the day.
Because it's on autopilot, it's a habit.
It's a habit, and if there's stuff to do, then Jill might be busy with a lot of the order work. I'm sure she's probably quite busy at the moment, having just come back from overseas with all the tax stuff now, which is also in her lane to handle. So Stuart can continue to focus on the trading model without getting caught up into the nuts and bolts of the tax and the administration and that side of things. So it is a very, very smart model that they've generated, and it's a great habit. And they travel all the time. You know, they've traded from being on the Shackleton route down to Antarctica at sea on the internet there, in the Serengeti in a tent, and I know they've just been in Transylvania and they've been trading up there too. So, you know, they're good war stories. You know, I also think about probably some of the fun places. El Fontanelle, great beach club. If you're ever down in Capri, I know you're going to be in Positano in
I'll be in Capri for a day for sure.
So El Fontanelle Beach Club, got some great trades away there, and wonderful, great internet there. I can tell you, it's a good place to trade. Wonderful place to have a beer too. Let me tell you.
I can imagine. Any other individual success stories you want to bring to the forefront, AB? I think this real life practical application for our listeners is really beneficial.
Yeah, I'll give you a very different one. I was at dinner on Saturday, and I happened to be sat next to someone I hadn't spent any time with. I knew who they were, but I hadn't met them previously. They're quite a well-known figure down in Byron Bay, where I live, particularly in the hotel space, in a couple of amazing hotels down there, which turns out is just a tiny slither of what his business empire really is. Very under the radar sort of guy, like peeling an onion, and after a bottle of Shiraz and some nice food, you know, we started to have a really, really good, deep conversation. And he reminded me of someone else I know that's not dissimilar. The sort of the DNA and the behaviour was quite similar. And he's got business interests that span across hotels, lots of farmland, a marketing company, a transport business. They were involved in the early days of importing game and venison, particularly into Australia, and been very successful at that. And I was talking, tell me about how do you work on, because it's quite a higgledy-piggledy type of business, at least to the outside. Probably isn't, but it just sort of, there's a lot of different components to it. How do you decide what you're doing next? You know, petrol stations, lots and lots of things like this. And they said it's really simple. Is it a natural fit for what we do? Does it add value to what we do, and is it aligned with what our values are within the business? An aviation company as well. There's a lot of different chunks of things in there, and they've all been added on as for different reasons at different times. But it's been a very natural extension of what they do, and I think what it came down to more than any simple thing is that if you have a vision and value lens to look through within your business, and as we do, if something's aligned with what your vision and values are for what you do, it's an easy yes to make from a corporate perspective. Yes, you've got to check the numbers stack up, or if that's the case, or location or staff meshing or whatever it may be. But if it, at its absolute core, is aligned to what your vision and values are as a business, it's just a tick straight away and you'll make it fit. Whereas if it doesn't align vision and values wise, you let it go. And it doesn't matter if it's the best deal in the world. If it doesn't align with what your visions and values are, there's no point, because you're going to be walking along with a stone in your shoe if you acquire that business or integrate it in what you do, or you invest in something. Getting back to, you know, the habits around investment. If you invest in something that's not you, doesn't feel right, it's never going to fly. It's never going to work. It's never going to be ingrained totally in what you do. It's never going to become a habit, because all it's going to be is an annoyance. It's going to become a bad habit. So I think there's an example of two really different types of people that work very well in the process and as a team. And then holistically, as it may sound, the other side was more about whether it aligns to the growth of the business from a vision and values. Either way, that's the habit, the lens that's always been used by those two particular groups of people to immense success.
So vision and values, systemize, built from the habits, result.
Yep. And if there's a conflict, it doesn't even get a start. It's a bad habit. If it conflicts with what your values are, not going to happen, because
Gotcha.
You're going to feel uncomfortable with it. And that can be really, it can be tricky. I'll give you an example of this. So I'm in the midst of a property transaction in Italy at the moment. And the lens, as you know, you've known me for long enough over the years, I'm pretty hard-nosed when it comes to business decisions and certainly money decisions.
Oh, yeah.
And
Still waiting on a new chair 5 years later.
I think you bought your own, didn't you, out of the millions you make? The lens I'm looking through there it's becoming blurred, and it's not because I'm getting older and need new specs. The decision making, one of my values obviously is my family. It's probably my highest value, and I'm looking to get something specifically that I can foresee as being this family hub. Well, we're there, and we've got a particular place in Italy we keep going to, and so we want this to be our base for the sort of European summer as I transition to another phase of my life. So tick, 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 all the values and everything are aligned. Now I'm looking at the dollar side of it, and it's not the price of the property. That's not the consideration. But I'm looking at it and going, okay, from a pure business perspective, the yields, well, for a start, if you've got a property in Italy and it's being let, you've got a property manager letting it, which it would be for 8-9 months of the year, there's a 30% clip to your property manager. You know what you pay for your properties in Australia is about 7%, and a week's rent is 30% full service over there for a property manager. And
it's expensive.
You might drill someone down to 25, maybe 22, I don't know. But at the moment, that's where the conversation is starting. And it's nose to tail, it's all done, it's really easy. So then, and you look at it and go, well, that's great, I haven't got any stress, I haven't got anything to think about. But then when you whack that number into the spreadsheet, because I can't help but do that because it's ultimately a dollar decision. I can't help who I am. It's like, what an absolutely ridiculous investment idea that is.
But it's a lifestyle decision, right?
So you got to go back to your vision and values and go, yeah, but the values I'm looking through here and the vision I have for this isn't just simply a nuts and bolts decision in isolation. To an extent, I suppose it's a lifestyle asset. To an extent, it's commercial, it's self-funding, but it is also a lifestyle asset. And I'm having a heck of a job grappling with that because I very clearly want this, but in my DNA, I'm looking at it going, yeah, it's just nuts. I can go and chuck that into a trade and turn that over twice through the year and make 3 times the money. So why would I do that? But then if I do that, I don't get this. And so going back to the example being Ray with the vision and values, that's such an important thing. So the vision and values are stacking up. I just can't ratify it against the number process at the moment. So to be continued. Be there in a couple of months, so I'll work through the numbers properly.
You want me to go and check it out? I'm happy to stay there.
Yeah,
tell you what it's like.
Why not? You can take your time and have a good mooch through it. But so there's an example that things sometimes aren't clear cut. And I think when you bring emotion to a decision, and my family to me, of course, there's a level of emotion there. As soon as you bring emotion into an investment decision, it becomes very challenging. And that's why, getting back to the notion of habits, if your habits are processed, this is what I do, these are the behaviours I have, it actually excludes emotion from it. It's just a pure, this is the path that we take, this is what we do, no emotion in there. And that's why habits and good habits around money are great. My habit of now putting the numbers through the spreadsheet is great. It's going to save me making a bad commercial decision. But this decision-making box is a little bit more complex because I've got a longer-term vision of 3 months or 4 months of the year over there with the kids, and the kids are going to be at school there and all of this stuff. And that's a really hard quantum to then put into a spreadsheet. And this is the reality of life that we live in. We can build brilliant money habits, but at the end of the day, we're all human beings, and we can also bring that human baggage to the decision-making too, which can be an emotion. You put those two things together, you end up with inaction, which is where I'm at the moment, looking at the deal for a while, and not knowing which side the ball needs to land on the fence.
Pull the trigger, AB.
Yeah, I'm getting some pressure on this at home at the moment.
I think you can't make every decision based on dollars and cents. My dad always said that. He said, Mitch, not every decision is based on money. Sometimes you just have to do something for yourself.
Yeah, look, there's some wisdom in that, and knowing Dino, I think that's pretty sage advice. So that might be the sort of tailwind that pushes me over the top with it. But there's an example where you can talk about the simplicity, and yeah, it's just easy. You have a process, and away you go. But then something can sometimes come out of left field and scupper you, and life certainly has a habit of doing that. But the more we can help our people stay in the lane of budget and having a financial game plan that they review, that they check, they stay on track, and they have a process to do it, they're not going to have to grapple with that, which I am right now, which is a more emotional decision. It's more mechanical, which is far easier. And they're the habits that you want to encourage, as opposed to the moment of weakness on my part where I've allowed emotions to bleed into a financial decision.
So last question for you before we wrap up, nice and quick. How do our listeners out there maintain and sustain their habits? It's all good building them, but keeping them is the hard part.
Look, I think that there's always another level with any habit. And I think that review process is really important. So when you understand what you do and why you do it, if it's a mechanical process, that's quite easy to do. Doing a post-mortem on your decision-making from time to time, I think, can be quite useful. So if you break that down as to just really granular now, rather than I work, I manage to save some money and I do some investing in the stock market. If we get really granular for a moment, at the end of each trade, breaking that trade down, looking at the good and bad within the trade so that you can look to extend what you do on the good side and try and eliminate some of the bad stuff that's in there, is that process of continual improvement. So reviews and self-examination become really, really important within there. I think sustaining those habits across the board more generically rather than being so granular is to be asking yourself the question, is it serving you or not? And the way to do that is to look at each week, each month, each quarter, each year to see if you're getting closer to your goal or further away from it. And if you're getting closer, how can you tighten your habits even further in a good way to keep you doing the good things? Or if you've had a couple of things that have slidden in to stuff that you've started to do, patterns of behaviour, you're feeling flat and can't be bothered to do exercise today. If that's your thing that gets you up for the day, you've got to bring that back in and get back on point and do what you need to do. So I think that constant reviewing of yourself, and again, being very, very honest with it, enables you to stay sustained at performing at the best version of yourself that you possibly can. It just comes down to good habits and replacing any grey or bad ones with something that's just slightly better.
Very nice. Thank you, AB.
Absolute pleasure, anytime. There you have it, guys. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Most importantly, hit the notification button, and we'll look forward to hosting you next week.